Hello, it's Dragons and Scarlets Light, Cardiff and Ospreys woes. And before I lose my train of thought, Slasher gets intercepted by Gareth Davis, we start talking about the festive derbies. Hope you enjoy. Hello and welcome to another edition of the Wrap. Sorry we were a day late. I had the man flus, so we had to go. So I'm joined by Nick and Hattie. Unfortunately, because we are a day late, Dan is whipping the Abertillery boys, not satisfied with the win on the weekend. He wants them to go even better. So we are joined by Gav from Dragons Lair. How are we doing, Gav?
Very well, thank you, Harley.
Nick and Hattie, how are we both doing?
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Got all my Christmas shopping done. We're ready.
And that's all we can ask for the day before Christmas Eve. So let's get into it. Unless anyone has anything they want to share to the group beforehand. Well done, Nick. That's a very nice jumper. I noticed you a Christmas
Well,
jumper
I,
you've
I
got
took
there.
I took the party lead. Obviously, none of you did. I excused Gavin because obviously he wasn't necessarily prepared. But hopefully, I'll get him in producer Lee. I'll get a bonus points
It's
for taking the lead
it's not
Well,
quite
on that.
Christmassy, but I do have Nick Tompkins' training top on.
Oh
um,
well, what more do you want?
Molly does have a Christmas jumper on, which I was just telling Harley and Gavin about. It's got dancing gingerbreads on.
Wow.
Mm.
The dance on their own, or is that just part of Molly moving? It makes them look like they're dancing.
No, they've got like their leg up. You know, like the dancing girl emojis. They're like that, but they're little gingerbreads. If you're listening to the audio, you can't see. I'm doing like a little,
Yep.
a little thing.
Once again, Hattie with the classic gag that is not suitable for an audio format. But people on YouTube would love it. So, Nick, we move on to your never-ending news desk. What have we
Yeah,
today? Because I think there's even some fresh, hot breaking news.
there are quite a bit of news actually. Start off with sort of former Osprey players. Two former Osprey players have signed agreements in England. In that, Nicky Smith signed a 3-year deal to now move to the Sales Sharks at the start of next season. I think he's been well received at Leicester Tigers. I think they probably were quite keen on to continue there, but he's decided to move on. But Ollie Cracknell has decided to sign a new contract with the Leicester Tigers. We'll stay with the Ospreys. As you know, unfortunately, Jack Morgan has a long-term injury. And the Ospreys have confirmed that they've signed a South African back rower, Marco de Wit, who played for Griquas, I think, on a short-term contract. He's joining the Ospreys. He's a big guy. He's a 6'4" back rower, 23, and raised in Cape Town, and supposedly a powerful ball carrier, and adds perhaps a slightly different dimension to the Ospreys' options in that area. The Dragons have announced the signing of a powerful tight head. Oh, I'm not sure. Gav, did he come on a loose head on Saturday? Sebo Delamini.
No,
If I pronounced that incorrectly, I apologise. And if somebody can put me right.
he came on at tight head.
He's tight head, sorry.
He did come on at tight head on Saturday, yeah.
Thanks, Gav. He's a 24-year-old South African, and for ease of pronunciation, he's known as the Big D. And he certainly is a big D in that he weighs in 118 kilos. So he started his career at the Blue Bulls and then moved. And for me, is a good addition to the squad. And only today, the Dragons announced that Salomone Funakani, the man of mystery, has left the club. The Tongan international has played for Pontypool, but I think I'm right in saying, Gav, he did not feature in any games for the Dragons.
He played a
Despite
friendly.
he played a friendly.
Played a friendly against Scarlets in the pre-season, but has played no competitive games for the club whatsoever.
So it's one of those probably decisions that had to wait because of contractual agreements. Correct me if I'm wrong, but probably all round it's the best move for everybody.
He arrived with a knee injury, had an operation, developed sepsis in the knee injury, so that held him back. Came back, played for Pontypool, got injured again, played another game for Pontypool, and then that was pretty much it.
well, for all round and for him as well. Obviously, he won't be happy. I think I saw his statement. We wish him well. And the going on to the Welsh Rugby Union, obviously been widely reporting that former Fleshley prop Anthony Buchanan has resigned because he has no confidence in the WRU exec board, and he was only on the governing body council, which sits I think a couple of levels before, and is responsible for community rugby, but he's resigned. And today we've been fortunate to have our Christmas letter from the WRU released in the names of Chief Exec Abby Teeny, Chair Richard Coddick-Ewood, and President Terry Godner, that any agreement, no resolution on the decision to cut a professional men's side. That process is still ongoing, but it's for me anyway, and I might be completely wrong on this. I'd be interested if you guys have an opinion. It's looking more and more that we might be going into a licensing. They're keen to use that term process in the new year, and that will further delay any decision and all the uncertainty that continues to bring to players and staff at the 4 clubs regions. Happy for them to comment.
Mhm. I was talking to Hugh the other day, and he was like basically saying he's becoming more and more convinced that it's going to end up as 4 and this was all a waste of time. And honestly, I'm starting to see it like it's so drawn out and we're not getting a conclusion. And I feel like they would have had enough information by now about who it would be.
They want somebody to fall on their sword. That's what they're
Yeah.
waiting for.
And,
And no one's going to do that.
and like the thing is, there's so many, I think there's so many legal implications about going down to 3 and what happens in contracts and whatever that unless somebody actually folds or makes that decision themselves, like I, I don't know.
Two of the two of the teams have signed a PRA, so they've got a contract with the union. So the union would have to buy them out that contract if they wanted to not give them a license. And then everybody else has a slice of the pie. But the WRU have just made poor decision after poor decision after poor decision. And now when it comes to having really to make a decision, they seem incapable.
Mm.
I think they're very careful in the language they're choosing. They're mentioning things like a fair and open process. And, as an Osprey fan from where we are, the no information from Y11 and any supposed bid, which I think is pretty well documented that the Y11 have made a bid for Cardiff. They're one of the 2 bids. Harley, if you correct me if you think I'm incorrect in that assumption.
Nope.
For me as an Osprey fan, I think probably the best process would be a franchise situation. And then Hattie, it's down, and whatever Coddick-Ewood says, and that was a bit of a ridiculous statement again about, the Ospreys might buy the Dragons or whatever, that it's 1 out of 2 in the West.
So what was your understanding of that, Nick? So my understanding was that Ospreys, for instance, or Scarlets could buy the Dragons to have the license for the team in the East.
Yeah, it's nonsense.
So they would have to play in the East. So
Well,
that's not actually saving Scarlets, is it? If it was Scarlets, because I can't
nonsense.
imagine people from Llanelli want to go to Newport of a
Exactly.
Saturday.
I
It
totally
doesn't
agree
make
with
any
you.
sense.
No.
The only thing I suppose they could argue, and if Y11 were to buy Cardiff, you might be able to make a case for playing some games in a redeveloped St Helens. Well, but again, it's far from the optimum solution, isn't it?
Yeah, but would St Helens even get redeveloped if
Well, I
they were
know
playing there full time?
I don't know about that. As a former employee of Swansea Council, I know the money is there in the budget, obviously for the 2025-26 budget, there was 4.1 million. that money will not be used, in my opinion. Whether that then rolls on to the next year, I don't know. It's part of a bigger deal around Swansea Bay development that would allow working closely with the university to develop health and sort of development and sports development in that area. So I think as a council, Swansea would be keen for it to develop, but I think they would find it very hard to justify that commitment financially if there's no professional rugby of any form in Swansea.
The thing for me is when they talk about franchises and it's going to be a fair and open process, but we know it won't because they won't tell us what their process is or what criteria they're using. Or is it going to be financial stability? In which case, well, actually, really fall Cardiff because we're owned by one. It would be the easiest because the WRU owners so it would just be winding down one of their own companies. If it's based on fan support, well, then Ospreys at the moment have the lowest attendance. Get to them. If it's about performance on the field, it's the Dragons. But then the Dragons own their own ground, which is a big plus. They've got the most financially secure. So, and their community thing is really strong. Ospreys again have a very strong community presence. You could argue Scarlets probably service one of the smallest populations in Wales. Because actually, it's basically Llanelli and Carmarthen with a bit of Pembroke and area. But so there's unless they tell us what the criteria is. I mean, I agree with you. It's something we said as soon as they announced it was 3. It's like we're going to stay at 4.
Yeah,
because they're just not going to be able to go for the gun. The URC don't want them to go to 3. The Mad Hatters who want the Anglo Welsh, it's not going. They don't want 3 teams. They don't want any teams personally, but they said basically 2 or none, nothing. And it's a bit of a waste of time. Just like if you want the benefactors to keep paying, because that's the other thing as well. Is what benefactor wants to pay to have no control over their business? You might as well say, do you want to be a super duper sponsor where you have all the risk of owning a company, but none of the actual benefits or decision making?
I don't fully agree with that, I must admit. I think if it's not 3, I think that, well, and if it's not 3, I'd be delighted. But I do think then it seriously questions the people who are in charge of WRU in the senior positions, whether they can carry on. And maybe that's not a bad thing, but I think there's strong support for the key players in this, and I think there would need a revolution to go to 4, back to 4.
I mean, I feel like there's a lot of questions being asked of them already of whether or not they're suitable for their roles. So whether or not they had to backtrack on 3 and go back to 4, I think.
Well, they've already backtracked, haven't they? There was the
Yeah, like
the
I think
optimal solution of
the
2.
the fact that like we can all kind of sit here and go like, yeah, I believe it. It kind of says a lot about their leadership, and like I've seen them go back on decisions so easily. Like they said last year that the Celtic Challenge teams were going to be franchised out and that you'd have to that the regions be putting bids in, and then they recanted that because they were going to do something to the men's. Like they do this, and I just don't believe anything that they're going to do until it actually happens.
Anyway,
And,
let's
and
wait
you
till
could easily see them going for 4 and then going for a 2+2 funding model,
Yeah, exactly.
which nobody would want. But
Nobody want, but like also nobody wants. But nobody really wants 3, apart from the people that don't even watch rugby to begin with, but just like to complain about it when the camera's shoved in their face and it goes on Instagram or Facebook or whatever.
and there's the geography people on Twitter who kind of want true regions. Still don't understand what that means or where they'd play. But as long as they don't mention the names of any existing teams, they'll be happy.
Well, as a supporter, and maybe hopefully Hattie would agree with me, a 2+2 would be.
Would be better than 3.
We start for that now, wouldn't we, Hattie?
Because like the thing is, like 2+2, does that even mean like what if the thing is like if they say 2+2, right? Does that not mean that say if like then the Ospreys and the Scarlets were getting less funding and they'd had less budget and they had less support, whatever? Does that not mean that they can't go out and get more support from outside sources?
Exactly.
So like
stop them.
exactly.
And that's the key thing in all this David Buttress has been on the Dragons Lair pod a few times, and has basically said we put in our own money in it. We get to say what we want to say,
Yeah,
and that's been his line from the start.
I just, I give up with it. Oh, I don't give up, but I do sit there angrily on my sofa as I scroll my phone every day.
And the issue with it as well, when they say no, and it's mainly people who feel disenfranchised. We want truly representative sides. I don't think people really care. We've said on the Dragons Lair, if they said, right, well, you have to rebrand, you can't be called the Dragons, you have to be called the Gwent Steelers. As long as they're playing rugby in Newport, I don't think people really care. Yeah,
I honestly think like the concept of it being truly representative doesn't really make any sense.
of course it doesn't.
Like the only like yes, Ireland is split up into provinces because that's how they've done it, but that isn't truly representative because it was truly representative based on proportion of people or what it's not geographically equal, it's not proportionally equal, it's based off like ancient tradition, which makes
It's based on
no
the Four
sense.
Kingdoms. It's
Yeah.
based on the Four Kingdoms of Ireland,
so, so that's kind of not
Yeah.
nonsense, but like it is a bit weird. You look at like the spread of, I don't know, WNBA teams in North America. That's not representative of anything. You look at like the representation of rugby union teams in England. That's not representative
No.
of anything.
Scotland.
Scotland, like
Yeah.
France, it
Yeah.
doesn't make any sense. It's just where people are going and where people are making money.
And it's not just, I think it's about where people are interested in things as well. And you see all these people saying there should be a side in North Wales. I used to play rugby in North Wales. There's about 11 people playing rugby in North Wales. Slight exaggeration, but there isn't a play. No one cares. No one cares.
Apart from Nick.
I'm a North Walian. I live in North Wales. I was brought up in North Wales. I lived in South Wales, obviously, as well. But I totally agree. There's no calling for a professional rugby team
No.
in North Wales.
Wrexham
RGC,
and sorry, go
RGC,
on.
RGC is fine. Playing it in the Super Rugby
Mm,
Company, that's great. It's a platform for North Walians to put their wares, if you like, on the
yeah,
open market.
at the
Uh,
right level.
at the right level, Gav,
Yeah.
100%. But there's no massive call for a professional team. And even if there was a professional team, you would have perhaps, I don't know what they get there, 1,000. I've been a couple of times, 1,000.
1,500
Yeah,
apparently.
yeah. So you'd get maybe 500 more. But that's not enough to sustain a professional team.
No.
So there's, when Scarlets tried playing a couple of games, going back, I'm old enough to remember them playing a couple of games at Wrexham. They were one-offs, and you'd get travelling support from Clonelly coming up, playing junior rugby games in North Wales and so on. But there was 3 or 4 thousand there at the racecourse. So there's
Mm.
no call for professional rugby of that level at that level in North Wales.
No.
And
Sorry, go on.
I was just going to say, I know that the women's team have played a couple of games up there, like full international games, and they've been the worst attendances we've had in recent memory. Get far better support down south, but Cardiff's optimal really to get the most people in, and Newport second.
And the women are better represented, North Walians.
There's so many.
I think
They're all related, but
Yeah.
there's a lot of them.
Of the World Cup squad, wasn't there 8 or 9 who were mid and North Walian and out of the squad?
I think there was 4 from one club
Yeah,
in North
they're from
Wales.
Nanconwy,
But
yeah.
yeah, but I think it's probably like 6 or 7, something like that.
Yeah, and you consider Wrexham and Newport have essentially the same population. There's
Yeah.
2 rugby clubs in Wrexham and there's 14 in the same area around Newport. It's
Yeah.
Mm.
There we are. Right.
Any
We'll
more
see.
news, Nick?
No, that's it. Thank goodness.
Right, so we'll move on to the weekend's games where, weirdly, only the Dragons and the Ospreys played.
I don't think that happened, Harley.
Oh, and Hattie, how about you tell us what happened Friday night then?
So, if you ever look at a stats page for the match that happened on Friday, you would assume that Cardiff won. If you actually looked at, I don't know, the play of the game, you would assume that Cardiff won. Yet somehow, through the strength of two very old rugby players and ex-internationals, the Scarlets won. I don't know how we did it, quite frankly. I've watched the game back and I was just flummoxed. The only, like, literally, the only thing that made a difference is that Cardiff kept getting into our 22 and did nothing. And then we got into your 22 like 4 times and scored every time. It was just, you just had no, like, not desire to it, but like, it was just like, you couldn't finish it. You just couldn't do it. It didn't matter what you did, you just couldn't. And then Gareth Davis was acting like he was 22 instead of, I don't know, 34. Actually, I don't think he's that old.
He's 35, isn't he, Gareth
Is he?
Davis?
I was going to say 35, 36.
Yeah.
Oh, bloody hell.
He's
Um,
saving his one world-class performance a year for the
for
annual
you.
game where he gets to play up towards his home in Pontcanna.
And he had a bloody lovely time. Jake Ball had a ball. Um, 18 tackles, because apparently, did you know second rows are allowed to tackle? You may not know this if you
I mean,
watch
there's
the
a, there's
autumn
a, there's a, an old
internationals.
head at second row who would tell you that's one of their primary jobs, but
Yes.
Um, and the two of them, I mean, we had other players on the pitch. Blair Tranderson again. Yes, he's been very, very good. I think our centre partnership went really well. But bloody hell, just the old men. I had a good time. Harley, how was it from your point of view? Because I still can't actually quite believe it happened.
I don't think I've ever been so angry at a Cardiff performance before. Like, just genuinely angry. Not necessarily because we played bad, because objectively we didn't. Our attack was fantastic up until about 10 metres from the line, to which
And
point we
then it
forgot
just fell
everything we've
apart.
done all season. Like, the whole thing, like, one of the few things about Cardiff this season has been our brilliant efficiency in the red zone and clever tap plays and things like that. But for some reason, as soon as we play the Scarlets at Cap, we're like, no, we've got to outmuscle these guys. And it's just like, but why? We can get around them. We've got a 12 playing 10, a 12 playing 12, and a 12 playing 13.
Yeah.
One of those 12s decided he didn't want to be on the pitch for the full game. And we still didn't get it. And
You
it was just
just
it was just frustrating. And then Gareth Davis did his two trademark things he does, which is a bullshit try from nowhere and then an intercept because the scrum half seems to not understand that Gareth Davis is faster than they can pass. And it just I mean, in
he
fairness to Mulder, he is coming back off not playing for 8 weeks after fracturing his face.
but you would
But
still, like, if you're playing against the Scarlets, you'd still know that you've got basically a winger at 9. Like, and he is quite famous for his intercepts. He's quite well known for them.
especially
And
against Cardiff.
he's still, he may be getting on a bit, but he still does them.
Russ Petty put a stat out that said that Gareth Davis had scored a brace in the last 3 Cardiff Scarlets derbies at Cap, and it's
Yeah.
just utterly infuriating. On the positives, Mason Grady's looking like he's back into some form. It's nice
Yeah,
seeing
I
him
thought he
actually
played
run
quite
with a
well,
bit of
actually.
venom. Alan Lawrence still, for me, possibly one of the best underrated players. And I thought Haven Sebastian actually had a very good game
He did.
as good, which I don't know what's happened with those two former Scarlets props we've got, but they suddenly learned how to scrummage. So there was clearly something
They
wrong at the
couldn't do
Scarlets.
it. They couldn't do it for us, but they're doing it for you.
Nick, Gavin, I don't know if you want to chime in with anything on this one.
No, it was just a bit of a strange game, wasn't it? I think you say, I think Cardiff will be kicking themselves, but fair play to the Scarlets for sticking in the game. And sometimes stats don't always tell the story, do they?
It was a terrible game of rugby for 40 minutes and an absolutely insane game of rugby for 40 minutes. Uh, and it was interesting, how you were saying about the kind of red zone conversion. Cardiff have been excellent at it all season, but just nothing happened, did it? It was, nothing worked. And we talked before recording. The, the more desperate they got, the more insane Callum Sheedy's decision making became.
I feel like it's almost like our defense was really good and it just
Mm.
frustrated you and it just became like this mental game. And like Callum Sheedy just had a bit of a Callum Sheedy. Sorry.
He's got in his locker, hasn't he, to make absolutely shocking decisions.
Yeah. And just yeah. I remember when people were like, oh, we need to bring Callum Sheedy back into Wales, like blah blah blah. It's like, well, actually he also does shit like that where he just has a brain fart for 40 minutes and he doesn't know what he's doing.
I think the best way to describe it is Callum Sheedy is the player everyone thinks that Finn Russell still is.
Yes, that's really good.
But also
You
people
know,
think that Callum Sheedy is like 21 and he's definitely not.
No,
he's also
what's he
not
now,
that
Harley? Is he 27?
yeah, 27, 28. It's not he's still not that old.
No.
He's old for Wales squads at the moment because we've been
He's
playing
30.
toddlers.
Knocking
Is
on
he
his 30.
30?
He's
Yeah.
30.
He's got
God.
2 more World Cups in him if he was playing in Ireland.
It's true.
And British Lions too.
Mm. And if he played for like Norway, he'd be making his debut at 49.
He's third, fourth tier of European rugby there. Which my favourite thing I found out is Lewis Rees-Zammit's brother is a
Plays for Malta.
Maltese international.
Yeah.
And I played against Maltese side once. They were considerably better than us.
Did you accidentally end up playing the national team without realising it?
I know, I don't think so, because they were all South African. Mind, who knows?
Well,
I think that derby done. The one thing
Harley
I
doesn't
did
want to
want to
talk
say,
about it anymore.
No, no.
but
Move
there
on,
is one
move on.
aspect of the game I'd like to talk about because I have seen some comments about it online, and I think they're way out of order. Friend of the pod, Ben Breakspear, had an absolutely fantastic game. I thought he
I
handled everything brilliantly. I know there are a couple of things where he might have gone for a penalty try, but he didn't see it that way, and I think that's those sort of interpretation decisions I'm going to let. That I think he called pretty much everything bang on.
and I think
We had one big scuffle right at the start. He put a stop to it, and they basically stopped dicking about after that.
I think he was very fair, and I think I almost don't particularly like when you've got a derby and the referee is also from that country because it you can quite easily start saying that there's favoritism or that there's this or there's that. And I think he was very fair. I know he's not a Cardiff supporter or a Scarlet supporter. He did confirm that to us, but you'd actually think he'd be trying not to get the Scarlets to win. But he was very fair and he had an excellent game.
The only
Yeah.
thing I would add to that is, regardless of Ben or anybody else, I've seen some comments about the games we're going to talk about later about the officials. And I agree with Hattie that, okay, you're going to get officials from that country. It's no different if there's an Irish into pro games this weekend. But, I don't agree with this bias argument. And they're only one of a number of officials in the game. So yes, officials make mistakes. We have to accept that. Yes, officials might not be in some countries by better than others. We have to accept that. But I don't agree with this bias because they're only one of a team. So you've got assistant refs, you've got TMOs, and I know they're very highly their performance is highly reviewed and analytically. So whether they're good or bad, because they're good or bad. It's not because of any bias.
Mm.
Absolutely. So moving on to the second game of the weekend, Ospreys hosted Munster, lost 10-26 at the Brewery Field, which is starting to show perfect form ready for New Year's Day. Nick, what do you make of the game?
Well, the Ospreys eerie started in very strong form, in that we had a meet up before the game. The Ospreys themselves started okay. They put a bit of pressure through some driving lineouts, but in fairness, Munster defended very well, and they only had a penalty to show for it. There were a couple of I heard Mark Jones afterwards, and I'm obviously an Osprey fan. I'm supportive of Mark, and I think he's a very good coach. But I thought a couple of the calls were very strange. Morgan Morse and Morgan Morris are very strong players, but they're not line-out specialists, and we lost 2 line-outs, which are key in the bigger picture when we threw it to the back. And would would anybody else say you'd want to put Morgan Morris up at the back of the line-out to win that line-out? Yeah, there was a couple of decisions by the ref which I didn't agree with, but they make mistakes. Thought the yellow card for Nagy was a bit harsh. But Munster played their game, didn't they? They got a bit of possession, they scored, and pick up some driving more. So, we came out of that quite well at 5-3 when we were down to 14. Dan Edwards was indifferent. He didn't have a great game, didn't have an awful game. We were a bit unlucky again when Morgan Morris, we had a bit of a lucky bounce, and we didn't quite score, and we had a scrum 5, and the ref got in the way, but most refs might have reset that scrum, but we got turned over, and those small things made a difference. So, and Munster just put the killer blows in just for half time, scored in 2 tries. Second half was give and take. Wasn't much in it. But again, we're bottom of the table because we've not played very well enough at home. I've gone on record as saying I think when the bigger teams come to Brewery Field, they won't enjoy the experience. But I would say quite the contrary at the moment. They seem to have enjoyed the experience very much. Thank you. 2 games have been disappointing for me as an Osprey. The games against Glasgow and against Munster, physical teams, and we haven't really, done enough to win those games. I know people were soft by the crowd, but it was almost 5k, which is 800 more than what's the corresponding fixture in March 24 at Swansea.com. But it didn't give them anything to cheer. So yeah, it was disappointing. And if I'm honest here, I'm glad and this sounds really defeatist, I'm glad we only lost by 16 points because at the end of the game it could have been more. So yeah, not great at all. And I know we'll go on to talk about the upcoming fixtures, but if ever Toby Booth's theme was relevant, we need to find a way because otherwise it's going to be a very miserable Christmas for Osprey staff and supporters. And I'm not convinced at this point. I'm decided to be down. I'm not sure 26 would be much better.
And you want to step in on that one? I was wrestling with a newborn, well, not so newborn during that game, so I didn't actually be able to pay too much attention to it.
I just feel like this is a very, very strong Munster side, which I wasn't really expecting with the kind of retirements that they had last year and the changes that they've had. But they're the strongest Irish side at the moment. I think they're sitting like second in the table. But having said that, I feel like they were just like, okay, we just need to get our bonus point win and be done. I don't think they really played their best match, and I also don't think the Ospreys played their best match. It was just a bit of a dredge. But yeah, hopefully, I say hopefully things improve. Not this upcoming game for the Ospreys, but
And not the one
maybe
after that. The one after that one.
Yeah, maybe like a bit later.
Lions
Yeah,
home.
Europe. Do one in
Lions
Europe.
home.
Yeah. And hopefully the pitch improves.
Well, we got
It's getting a bit boggy.
Yeah, the dry weather is forecast. So, and obviously, as an exciting attacking team that we now are, the heavy pitch is not suiting us.
No, it's not. It's just a bit claggy.
Brewery Field's always been awful playing surface, so I'm sure you remember, Nick, like kind of late 80s, 90s. It wasn't a great playing field then.
The river's quite close to the Gav, and I think the water table gets up, and I think, as I say, hopefully the dry weather that's forecast this week will mean that it will be a better surface for the New Year's Day fixture against Cardiff.
Just gotta hope Bridgend don't. Was that, I think it's Bridgend versus the Rags in between. So just gotta hope they don't tear it up too much. Yeah. Anything else from that game, Nick?
No.
Anyone who stood out?
Well, just an interesting aside, and I don't know if this is relevant to our wider discussion, but there's not many Welsh players playing well. Deavesy might be one of them. Moriarty, who quite rightly had a rest, but all the other players who I would say are playing quite well for the Ospreys, well, like both I don't know if he is Welsh qualified, he does his job, are all non-Welsh players. I'm thinking of Copasinga, Cassende, Boshoff, Ryan Smith. The best players for the Ospreys at this current point are non-Welsh.
What do you think? What do you think that would be then? Do you think that's issue of development, or just a lot of players have dropped off in form, injuries?
Probably the uncertainty, isn't it, Harley? At the end of the day, there's only two teams being mentioned. The Ospreys have probably had the most mentions about an uncertain future. We've got our two best players who understandably have decided to move on. So therefore, it's not a great environment.
Well, if no one else has anything to say, I think it's time to bring some happiness in the squad because Dragons have not just won their game, they've won the second game in a row, and they absolutely thumped Connacht. All right, they let him have and they even had felt so confident they took pity and let them get a try bonus point right towards the end. It was some proper garbage times. Gav, you were actually there. You made the trip up to Newport.
I did.
How was it?
It was amazing, to be honest. Yeah, I was stood on the terrace with Jamie and Gareth, who I do the Dragons Lair with, and we just kept turning to each other and go, what the hell is happening?
You didn't say that, Gav. You didn't use that
No,
word.
no, I did not. I used slightly stronger language at the time. It was unbelievable. Because it wasn't the Leon game. I still don't understand how we won that because we were poor. But we were excellent for 65 minutes, dominated them physically everywhere around the field. Bundy Aki did nothing. And Nyron Owen just had him in his pocket for the entire game. Every time they carried the ball, we just disrupted them. The number of knock-ons was huge, and it wasn't because the surface it was wet or anything. It was literally because we were just continually in their faces. Ryan Woodman making 18 tackles. Levi Douglas, who joined us this season, just bringing a physicality that we haven't had at the club since Rowlands left. Just every time he could only do one run in every kind of 4 or 5 moves because he needs a little breather. He spends a lot of time having a whiff, but every time he got the ball, he's just running with defenders hanging off him. Harry Keddy, we were missing Wayno, but didn't matter because Harry Keddy was just Wayno essentially, taking the ball over the line whenever he got there. Shea Hope at 9, just bringing everyone to play. And on the Dragons Lair, we've been really critical about the attack, but the attack just clicked. Fine Nisi at 13, just give us a bit of go forward, bit of sleight of hand. And then, oddly enough, if he gives the ball to one of the most dangerous wingers in Welsh rugby in space, he'll do stuff with it. And Rio had his best game in, well, at least a year. I know we were speaking to his mum on the terrace after the game, and, we were all saying how pleased we were for him, and he absolutely deserved that performance. But it was difficult to pick a man of the match to the point that on Premier Sport, they actually selected the entire 23 as the player of the match, but because everybody played so well. And everything just clicked in a way that I haven't seen. It's the best win since we beat Munster, the first game of Di Flanagan's era. Bear in mind that's only our second league win in 18 months as well. And the atmosphere, slightly less than the Brewery Field. It was 4,700, but it was raucous. And I remember Rodney Parade being like that 20 years ago, and it was bad. I would not want to have been playing there. Every time someone dropped a ball, just the entire terrace shouting Eeyore at them. It was just this really kind of quite hostile environment. And and there was a lot of people drinking quite early on in the day, so it was quite a boozy atmosphere. But it was good. It was old-fashioned rugby environment. It was it was great. Yeah, and but we've got stuff to build on now. We've got players who are playing with form. Yeah, I
I
Yeah,
don't.
thought
so
the I thought the when you think you haven't got your first two choices at hooker, or probably your first three
Mm,
choices at hooker, I thought Ollie Burrows, what he was on, did well. And I thought the lad
mm.
that's come in from
George
RGC,
Roberts.
he did all right.
Yeah,
And I think Shea Hope, there's an opening there really for me, in that there are three scrum halves, two Ospreys, and obviously Thomas Williams is way above everybody else. But for a young Welsh scrum half, there's definitely an opening, and if he can carry on that type of form, Shea Hope, he's got a real opportunity.
he turned the tide against Leon. When he came on against Leon, we became a better side.
Mm.
And the three tries that Connacht scored in the last 15 minutes also coincided with Rodri coming on. And no criticism of Rodri, he's been around forever. But we lost a lot of the zip
Mm.
that we'd had for the previous 60 minutes there. Yeah, I'm biased clearly. I have to talk about the Dragons every week, and I don't get to talk about wins very often. But I always knew those players were capable. People like Ryan Woodman, like Harry Keddy, always knew they were capable players. But now we've just bolstered them with players like Anisi, like Levi Douglas, who are just giving us something else. And Angus, who I love dearly, but I have not been a huge fan of for the last 6 months. His best game he's had in ages. His kicking was phenomenal. And it was interesting. Tinas de Beer, an old boy of yours, Harley, who I've not quite warmed to as much as some of the fans, because I just don't think he's the 10 we need. And his game management wasn't particularly good, but it didn't matter because both Shea and Angus were absolutely on it and making the right decisions at the right time. He does
yeah,
love a ridiculously wide pass when it's not necessary, doesn't he, Tinas?
yeah, yeah. I think that's one of the things I noticed when he was at Cardiff is, a lot of the game management actually went to, to our scrum half and to Ben Thomas at 12. That was where a lot of the management went, and it just let him to go and just. It reminded me of how we always used to use Jared Evans when we had Anscombe at 15, and it would just, he could just come in and pull off the stupid pass when he needed. Fantastic to have him in the backfield because he could do a tackle and get the ball off
Yeah.
someone.
He's an aggressive little bugger, isn't he? He
Pushing
just,
himself about.
He's a
yes.
frustrated flanker for sure.
Yeah, he plays like a six who can kick.
I
He
know. I
does.
suppose one.
Sorry, Harley.
So I was going to say, I know Gav because it's a conversation we've had a lot. You must love Ryan Warden because he is just a proper six. And I know
Yeah,
it's one thing is your biggest hate of rugby is when people keep trying to get rid of a proper six.
and he hits rucks and he tackles people. And he doesn't do a lot else because he doesn't have to, because that's his job. It's same with Levi Douglas. He hits rucks, tackles people, and carries the ball into contact. It doesn't need to be anything more complicated than that. And it's like, at Ospreys, Moriarty does the same job. Six just needs to be horrible. Ryan Woodman's a lovely lad off the field, but on the field, just puts himself about.
Mm. It does feel like fine, like that game, like you had the win, and it was like, okay, we've kind of got like the monkey off our back. It's good. And then it was like, oh, we're playing a game. You can actually win a game of rugby. This can actually happen. But it also felt like all of the pieces that were kind of like they were all there and they were all good, but like they hadn't quite slotted together. And it was like, oh, okay, like you've got Hope comes in, and it was like, oh, okay, we've actually got a team that works and can actually function. And you're right, it's when he came off, things started to, go a little bit wrong. And I think when you identify those key bits, it's like, oh, we've got it now. And you can kind of get on a roll. Whereas it'd be really, really difficult when you actually can't figure out how all the pieces fit together. And because the Dragons have not been, it's not just like, oh, that they've lost, like they've had some pretty horrendous losses as well. And now it's like, okay, this isn't just like a scraping by win. This is like
Comprehensive.
Connacht were on, like, they were getting frustrated because they just couldn't, like, they just could not get anything
Oh,
right. and it was down to the Dragons just being frustrating rather than Connacht having a particularly bad game. Like they just couldn't do it because the Dragons were so good, which is not a phrase I've ever uttered.
No, not what I've said a lot, if I'm honest. There was a physicality that we've been lacking for a while, certainly probably since the days that Dean Ryan was coach. And, players, lots of our forwards are great lads, but just didn't seem to have that physical edge. And I think now that we've brought guys like Robert Hunt and Levi Douglas in, who really are very physical players, and Big D, again, his calves are as wide as my waist. These are big lads. But that's brought Woodman out. It's brought Teddy out. And Harry Bedell at 20 years of age at 7 was at every breakdown. Yeah, and then we brought Thomas Young off the bench to replace him, which isn't a bad replacement. It was a different side. We've got to do it again though. We have to do it again on Boxing Day.
I'll be honest, I'm a lot more worried that you might actually finally do it. Be honest, after watching that game, just purely because it was like, oh, they seem to have gotten rid of a lot of their issues that we normally exploit, and also Connacht plays quite similar to Cardiff, and they've nullified them quite well. At the moment, there's a little monkey just running around in my head, just going fuck 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 fuck. Apologies to anyone who's listened to this on the school runs. I know that's a big big bit of discourse on the Dragons Lair at the moment. Swearing,
Yeah,
whilst people on the
yeah.
school run.
It's mainly for some of the stuff that Gareth says, but what I think the Cardiff games, and I know we're going to talk about the games in a bit, but we've got a huge monkey in our back because we haven't beaten you in 10 years or whatever. But and in the pubs in Newport afterwards, people were being perhaps slightly more excitable than they would be. No one's thinking we're going to go to the Arms Park and it's easy, but we're going in there with a confidence that we've got players who can do that job.
Absolutely. I think big issues. I think we'll say
Yeah.
I'll check my theories when we do the previews. But if you enjoyed this podcast as much as Gav, and the rest of us enjoyed seeing the Dragons win and win in style, why don't you like, share, subscribe with friends, leave lovely comments for us under the YouTube. And if you want to hear a bit more about how the Dragons lads felt, the Dragons Lair is out on this channel. If you want to hear more of more of the Ospreys perspective, those boys are recording. If not this week,
Next
I'm
week.
sure some point soon.
Next week.
Car Essential have already put out a very upset message thing. Scarlets, I imagine, are out or there or
Yeah, it's
thereabouts.
already
They're
out.
usually doing something. And then if you're interested in the level below the game, we have the SRC pod. Or if you're not that worried about Welsh Rugby at all, we have the Global Game Line, where we have the URC Rewind pod, Mole Street Journal, who, even though there doesn't seem to be any American rugby going, they're still plugging away, which fair play to them. And we also have Bit of an Animal if you're of the South African persuasion. But anyway, that's enough pods and sharing. We're now going to talk a little bit about women's rugby. So, Hattie, can you give us a Celtic Challenge breakdown, please?
I can indeedy. So we started off with Gwalia away. They were playing the Clovers, who are a Munster Connacht side, and they were playing in Dublin. Because of course they were. Why would they not be playing away? I have to be honest, I am not a Gwalia fan on paper. However, I was really, really impressed with them. I think they played incredibly well. It's really unfortunate that it was a loss in the end. I think if I can I can't get the results up because I can't find it. But it was very, very close. I think the Clovers pulled away in the last couple of 10 minutes or so. And I think that just comes from their the sides are a little bit more professionalized, the coaching is more professionalized. Yes, they have the Celtic Challenge, but underneath that they have the Interpro series, so they're playing in that environment as well. And then they've got their club environment, so they're just playing a lot more rugby. As I said, the coaching setup is more professionalized. They've got more professional players, they've got more experience in there. the Gwalior girls are a bit younger. So yes, when you have Maisie Davis on, who by the way was the best player on the pitch by far. The commentators, I really dislike the Irish commentators in the Celtic Challenge. And they were kind of like taking the mick out of her and being like, oh, she's playing like she wants to get the player of the match trophy. No, she is just that good. She almost got a 50-22 as a loose head prop. And she's like 19, 20. Like it's mad. She was playing so well. Tilly Bukai, who is newly capped second row, she had the best game I've ever seen from her. She was incredible and she ended up getting player of the match as part of the team celebration, not celebration, but the team kind of review on the way back. Played really, really well. Um, but yeah, it's just a bit unfortunate that they lost, but it was a clear improvement on the rugby they were playing last year. And it was really like those last 20 minutes or so that let them down. The
So,
Brython
so
game, oh, sorry,
was going to
Harley.
say, so final score was
Thank you.
35-31. And I'd like to point out that, again, I was dealing with parent stuff. So I went, all right, I've got 5 minutes. I'm going to check in because I saw Gwali were in the lead. And they conceded 2 tries instantly, which sort of
Oh, I was
describes
like,
my
Harley,
weekend.
stop it.
And I just went, stop it. I'm not watching any more rugby after that point. That was it. It was
No.
because the team I wanted to win started losing every time I turned the TV on.
But they played so well up until those last couple, and then it just kind of fell off. The Brython game, as a Brython fan, I played against Glasgow Warriors, who last year I think won 2 games, one of which, oh no, they won one game I think and lost and then had a draw, but that draw was because the game was cancelled due to weather, and that was like their only points on the entire table for the whole year. They are so bad. They are they were sixth the first year, sixth the second year, and yet they absolutely smashed Brython. Brython were it was honestly, as a fan, when you're watching a game and you're almost embarrassed that that's your team, it was just like, how on earth have we fallen apart like that? I don't know, Harley, if you've got the score up, but it was just a blowout in the end.
Yeah, 36,
38-22.
17.
Yeah,
Uh, uh,
it was just horrible to watch. They completely fell apart. I felt maturity was a severe, severe issue in that side, especially at 10 with Hannah Marshall. I think she has great moments, and then she just hasn't quite learned when something's on. So she'll constantly be trying these really, really risky things, and it doesn't pay off. And she's been playing a lot of sevens. And so she went in at one point for a jackal. And I think it did pay off, but I was like, you're the smallest person on this pitch. Why are you jackaling? Like, I don't understand what, like, her decision making, I think, was really off. And she wasn't the only one. I think the rest of the back line, the decision was off. I think some of the forwards, their decision making was really, really off. Um, the replacement props as well, there was a really severe kind of drop in quality. Um, I will say the highlight was Fionn Lewis. Seeing her back was great. She really, really tried to kind of steer the ship. Nobody wanted to listen to her, which was unfortunate. I think if they try and play off 9 and actually listen to Fionn and let her steer, I think things could improve. But that wasn't happening. And I think for me, it comes down to coaching. Why was that side running around like a bunch of headless chickens when the Gwalior side was so organised? We know that they've got the same funding. We know that they've got really very similar equal player pools in terms of experience and in terms of contracts and everything else. So why is one side unable to put a game together and the other side nearly, got a win away from home against a very, very strong Irish side? Um, it just very, very frustrating.
I watched the game on the train up, and what you're saying, Hattie, about it being, it was chaotic. I coach under 12s rugby, and it looked a bit like that. It was just people running everywhere, and
Just Glasgow weren't even playing well either.
no,
It was just they
no.
were able to capitalise off bad decisions
Hmm.
made by Brython players. And I have mentioned Hannah Marsh by name. She wasn't the only one. There were others who were making really poor decisions. And as you said, it was like watching a much lower level of the
Mm.
game. Um,
It was chaotic, and a lot of the basics weren't happening. There was, I think it was just on the turnaround of the half, because Bristol were leading at that point, and they had about 4 or 5 penalties in the 22, and they had a few scrum penalties, and it was 3-on-1 overlap, and the ball just got dropped, and no
yeah.
pressure whatsoever.
It was just very frustrating. And there were players on that pitch who, like Amelia Tutt, I think had a really good game.
Mm.
She's been playing, she was at Leicester and then she was at Saracens. She's just not really had a chance in the PWR. She was really good defensively, really good in attack as well. And, when you're a winger, you could come in and you can try and get the ball as much as you can, but if nobody is passing to you and if everybody around you is making mistakes and if you're getting a bad pass, you're getting there is nothing you can really do to change that situation. And Fionn Lewis, she can pass the ball out, and if people then don't listen to what she wants, or she could be there at a ruck and nobody's in position for her to pass the ball to, or people are getting in the way, and then people are getting in the way of Fionn Lewis getting to the ruck. It's like the number one rule that you learn is don't get in the way of your nine. And it was just fundamental basics, just going very wrong. Um, Having said that, it's the derby this weekend at Cardiff Farms Park, I believe. Um, I'm predicting a Gwalia thrashing. I don't think there's any other way of putting that.
The only thing we talked off air is Gwalia allegedly in my team. They represent West Wales. Uh,
Brithom,
Oh,
Brython,
wait.
sorry,
yeah.
Brython. Oh, sorry, Brython. But I don't really feel it. Obviously, the Welsh. I want both teams to do well, especially. But I don't feel any skin in that game, as the saying is, because for whatever reason, they play all the games in Park of Scarlets. I have no issue with that.
Mm,
But I don't feel they're just two Welsh teams, and I want them to beat the Irish and Scottish teams. That's all I feel.
mm.
Uh, but maybe that's just me, and apologies if I got that wrong.
Yeah, I think as somebody who's kind of been following for a while and gets,
Mm.
insider gossip every once in a while, and having eyes and breeding things. Obviously Gwali are a bit better at splitting, although they are kind of Dragons based, but they have played games at Cap and they were originally affiliated with Cardiff. I think the Scarlets Ospreys situation, it is really difficult because there are actually a lot of Ospreys girls in that squad. Um, the North Walians are kind of split between the two. Um, it is interesting because when the Celtic Challenge kind of started, it was when the Ospreys were saying we want a team in the PWR. So I think that's probably why. Um, that's not going to happen. We know that's not going to happen. Um, but yeah, I do see it. I can understand why. And I think it would make sense to split the games maybe between the two, but that's obviously not going to happen when the Ospreys are playing at Brewery Fields and that
No,
they don't have their own ground. And I think they couldn't play at Swansea.com either. And whereas it's a lot
no,
easier to play at Park
no,
Scarlet.
and
So
I understand the logistics around it.
yeah. But yeah, as you're right, like you're alienating quite a large base of people um who
Really,
wouldn't
the Welsh Rugby Union?
alienate you. I know. But yeah, I think even if you are, like Nick and you're an Ospreys fan who doesn't feel a connection, or you're a Cardiff fan and you don't feel a connection because they're now playing at Rodney Parade or whatever, I think if you're able to watch the match, watch the match. Um, it got a bit spicy last year, so it should be fun.
I said, I mean, because I agree with everything Dave Redden said. I follow players, and because Molly Reardon plays for Gwalia, I'll always support Gwalia until she moves somewhere else.
Yeah, and if
I
you're
also
ever
feel
in
sorry
doubt,
for all the people who supposedly only support the Ospreys for Jack and Dewi.
yeah, you're Gloucester fans now.
I'd like,
Gloucester,
I'd like to
Gloucester.
offer one crumb of comfort for the Brython supporters. Last year, you were also terrible, and I
In
think
the beginning, yeah.
you were Glasgow's one win, but you got better because the problem with basing yourself in the Scarlets is you're gonna start slowly. and then all of a sudden, or after about Christmas time, you get better.
And I think also like it Ashley Beck did mention like because of where they're based, like a lot of them are traveling because they're at uni and they're at Hartpury or they're at Cardiff and there's travel involved. Whereas when they're playing for Gwalior, they're training pretty much at uni because most of them play at Cardiff Met and they're training at Cardiff Met and it's just a lot easier to get them together. So yeah, there are different. We got off to a slow start last year, but I don't remember it being that slow or that bad, actually. It really was quite bad. But as just a quick note, as Harley mentions Molly Reardon, if you're ever in doubt, the Gwalior hooker is in fact called Molly, with any surname thereof. They've got about three.
Yeah, it was almost like the officials for the Cardiff Scarlets game, which is Ben in the middle, Ben on either side, and then
Right.
Keith ruining it.
Yeah, all the Gwalior hookers are called Molly.
Right, I feel like unless anyone has anything else they want to say about Celtic Challenge, what time is the game?
It is, I can get it for you. It's on my phone. As you can tell, I've been really organised because I got stuck in a John Lewis for 2 hours today with my mother. And it's really set me on edge. It is at 2 o'clock on Saturday
There you go. So 2 o'clock in Betwixtmas.
in Betwixtmas, and I believe children under 16 are like £2 or free, and students are cheap, and adult tickets are fairly cheap as well. So if you're in Cardiff.
There's so many insults you could take, you could pull out of that there, but I shall refrain. So moving on now. So we're going to be taking a break after this. So we're going to do all the festive derbies in one go. So it's only the 4 games to cover. So just if, for those who aren't aware, Boxing Day kicks off 3 o'clock, Cardiff versus Dragons, and then you've got Scarlets Ospreys at 5:30. Then on New Year's Day we have Dragons versus Scarlets in the 3 o'clock slot with Ospreys hosting Cardiff at 5:30. So we're all going to take turns. We're going to talk about how we think our teams are going to do across, and then we'll do some final predictions at the end. So, Gavin, as you are the guest of the pod and the one riding on the biggest high at the moment, would you like to start?
So, I've been watching rugby and Welsh rugby particularly for far too long to get carried away. So, the Cardiff are the best side in Wales, have been for a while now, and we have a massive monkey on our back. So, we've got a lot of games coming up, and our view on the Dragons Lair, and I think my view is as well, I would rather us focus on the home games rather than the away. And we've had a 6-day turnaround for every game, including this. So I imagine I would like to see the weaker rotation at Cardiff to focus on winning at home against Scarlets. We've been a lot stronger at home this season. It seems more natural. That said, if we play like we did on Saturday and you play like you did on Friday, anything could happen really in that situation. And it'd be interesting to see now with our kind of raised levels of physicality, how Cardiff will deal with that because they they didn't really look like they were in a physical battle with Scarlets a lot of the time. My boy is a Cardiff fan for reasons I don't quite understand. Despite living in Sussex and having a Dragons fan for a dad, but but he's really drawn to the way they play, which is out really kind of wide and yeah, and we just got to stop Cardiff doing that. As for the Scarlets game, it's interesting because I don't think Scarlets have looked great this season. No, I can't talk. We've looked terrible at times, but I really do think we've got it in us to beat Scarlets, particularly if we don't throw the ball to Gareth Davis. That'll be an important part of it. I was going to ask though, Hattie, because I don't watch as much Scarlets as I perhaps should. It's set piece wise, what are the Scarlets like generally?
Um, our line out this year, I haven't been particularly like impressed with. But last year it was. Hugh's got a stat, and apparently it was very, very good. I'm not a stats person. I'm more of a, oh, that was fun. I like rugby kind of person.
Hmm.
That was a big hit. Um, and our scrum, I think at times has been excellent. At times it's been terrible. To be honest, it's the set piece for the Scarlets is much like Scarlets rugby, which is sometimes maybe good, sometimes maybe shit.
Okay.
And you just kind of have to roll with it. It depends who we put out. I'm assuming for the festive derbies we'll probably have Lousy and Ball, in which case it's a bit more threatening.
Yeah, there's more physicality there, isn't there? That's
And I think like we had injuries to both of them at the beginning of the season, and I think that really affected, every statistic under the sun, including our winning percentage.
uh, on the pod. We said the target really should be of the 4 games we had coming up: Lyon, Connacht, Cardiff, Scarlet. Winning 3 out of 4 would be ideal. And if we come out of the next 2 with 1 win, I'll be really happy. If we come up with 2 wins, I'll be overjoyed. And if we come up with no wins, well, plus ça change.
Just if you were interested, Gav, Scarlets are eighth for line out and 14th for scrums. Dragons are ninth and 10th for those two, respectively.
The scrum has improved this season with the arrival of Robert Hunt.
But then you say the Scarlet Scrum is not great. I think it's been much, much better in the last couple of games. It's the first couple of games is really skewing those stats.
I'd like to point out these are just not based on the URC stats, not my own personal rankings of these things.
Well, I still think you're wrong, Carly. And
That's
that's my
fine. You are entitled.
prerogative.
You are entitled.
So, Harley, I've got a question. If Dragons came to Cap and beat you, not you personally, but your Cardiff,
It would feel like I had been beaten myself
yeah,
emotionally. Yes.
would that be, kind of almost too much to bear? Where kind of having lost to
Uh,
Scarlets in the game you shouldn't have lost, then to lose to us would be almost too much.
my fragile mental health couldn't countenance thinking it right now. In which case, I'd be all for calling to just close down Cardiff just as the easy way to drop out team because clearly we cannot be a serious. If we are going to be that adamant that we're not a serious rugby team, what's the point anymore?
Have you not gathered by this point that you're not a serious rugby team?
I like to at least pretend sometimes we can be.
No Welsh teams are serious rugby teams. I have been for a while. I don't think, bear in mind, I've been doing the Dragons Lair pod for 3 years, and in that time, I have talked about 5 wins in 3 years, and 2 of those were in the last 2 weeks.
Got a great wheelchair rugby team though.
Yes, yeah, the best side in Wales,
Mm,
and the community work is superb.
yeah,
Our community work is easily the best in Wales, but you know, I'd like to see it on the field as well for the men.
yeah.
Yeah. As I said, speaking of the community work, Josh Gardner on this week's Bud and Mud did go through the list of all the different community outreach things that the Dragons do, just as a sort of point to say there is more to the club. Anyway, that's the Dragons' perspective from Gav. Nick, you've been a bit quieter, so we'll go to you next.
Okay. Uh, okay. I sort of agree with Gavin in the sense that probably make more sense for us to target the home game. Having said that, we've actually played better than we played away from home this season, and hopefully emotionally we'll be up for it for our visit to Parker Scarlets on Saturday afternoon. Looking like it's going to be a decent crowd there. And we've done pretty well there, and we've done pretty well against the Scarlets on the whole the last 3 or 4 seasons. Uh, we've got to match them, and where we've struggled this year, in particular, have been against Glasgow Bulls and Munster, against very, very physical teams. And with due respect to Scarlet, so even though they've got Ball and Lousy, well, we've certainly coped with Louse in the past. And when we come to talk to New Year's Day against Cardiff, they're not teams I think who are quite in that league physically. But I probably, when we come to predictions, I just got a funny feeling that Scarlets will just edge it, given that it's at Parker Scarlets. So yeah, I'm more hopeful on a dry day where we can play our natural attacking game, and on New Year's Day that we'll win that game.
Yeah, fair enough. And Hattie, the Turks' perspective.
Yeah, Scarlett Osprey's game is a weird one because I know it's supposed to be the big one. This is arch rivals, and there is that. Like I do want to beat the Ospreys, but I actually am more dreading the Dragons game, and I actually hate Dragons versus Scarlets games more than any other game. I don't know why. I think I have this searing memory in my head of like the fist fight that broke out, and there was like scrum caps being pulled, and I think it was Ross Moriarty punched. I think it was Lousy in the face a couple of years ago, and I just have this image of that in my head, and I remember it really ruined my day. Um, so I really am dreading that game. I think the Scarlets Ospreys, it could go either way. I think it'll be tight. I think it'll be a not great game of rugby, to be honest. I think it'll be a bit of a dirge fest. And then Dragons versus Scarlets, I'm absolutely terrified that the Dragons are going to do what they did to Connacht the other day and just go wild. But I really hope they don't. But I think it could really be one where either the Scarlets go a bit wild or the Dragons go a bit wild, and I can't really see that one being close. Although it could be surprise me at all and be a draw. But I really am not looking forward to that game at all.
8 points if you get a draw right. Actually, just going on some predictions. No points if you don't get a draw.
I know, and I predicted a draw last weekend for the Dragons, and look what they did.
I know.
I know, and you're doing so well as well because you got max points for the first two games.
Did
Doing the
I?
closest prediction, yeah. Well, for a start, you're the only person who predicted the Scarlets to win.
Well, what can I say? Back the boys.
And I think you were the only one to predict Munster to win as well.
But I mean, yeah. I'm sorry.
Anyway, so now we've revealed how well Hattie did in the last round of the prediction league. My personal opinions. Fantastic time for my headphone to die.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, so Cardiff. I think even the players came out. Liam Belcher came out straight after the match, said that it wasn't good enough against the Scarlets. So I'm looking to see a reaction against the Dragons. And Cardiff can be quite good when it comes to doing reaction. It's not like a full-on backlash from New Zealand, but I could still see us having enough to pull out. We've got plenty of players now who've had a good run out. Like to see Tom Bowen come back in and just add a little bit of something. Yes, all right, he can be found out in the air, but that would involve Dragons having the kicking game necessary to go through, which is something I haven't seen from them. Really, as an aerial game. As for the Ospreys game, I'm dreading it because we're going to be doing really well. We're going to be 14 points up, and then the camera feed's going to cut out, and Morgan Morse has scored a brace when no one's looking, and I'm just going to be on all sorts of emotional trauma again. That's the things. It'd be interesting to see So Gav on the Lair, you were talking about with the 6-day turnaround, maybe going for a slightly more rotated team.
Yeah.
But do you think there's an awful lot of former Cardiff players who sort of found their way women out? Would you like to see, do you reckon a few of them, well, the ones who are fit?
Well, Thomas Young didn't start against Connacht, so I'll probably see him on the side. Seb Davis is back. So, I imagine he'll be rotated in because I don't know if Levi's got back-to-back full games in him. I know Wyn Jones is back training as well now. No, not an ex-Cardiff man, but So I would imagine both Seb and Thomas Young will start against you. And Shane
That's
Lewis
good.
Hughes.
Yeah. Me personally, I'm still quite gutted Shane Lewis Hughes, even though it did mean the birth of my new love of Alex Mann.
Very different players, Alex Mann and Shane Lewis Hughes. Shane Lewis Hughes
there's
cut
a
from a more
type of player I
traditional.
like.
Yeah, I think we like different types of players. You know, when Hattie was talking about Moriarty punching Lousy in the face, I really enjoyed that because I think that's what sixes should do. But
I mean,
Yeah, so
if it
I just
wasn't
like
my
absolute
team that
shit
he was
sixes.
punching, I think I probably would have enjoyed it. However, because it was happening to one of my favorite players, I did not enjoy it.
no, I can imagine. I grew up watching his dad and his uncle doing essentially the same thing. So, you know,
Yeah.
Must be nostalgia for you then.
well, Moriarty punching someone in the face. Yeah, it was very much a nature is healing itself moment.
He was just doing what was in his
Yeah,
soul,
it's genes,
his
isn't it?
destiny. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's probably his dad's proudest moment.
Almost certainly. It, to be fair though, Nick, I'm sure his uncle was probably the more aggressive of the two.
Richard
Yeah.
was an animal, wasn't
You can take the Moriarty out of Swansea.
he?
Yes.
Morrison.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right, so I think unless anyone else has anything more they want to talk about with festive derbies, shall we move on to our world famous prediction league? I say world famous because someone from America has at least commented, even if that is David from Scum of the Earth.
Yeah, that'll do.
He
Certainly.
counts. He'll love this. He'll love the shout out.
I know. I know. He actually asked me to record tonight, but unfortunately we're doing this. It's just you and I love going on Scrum. Anyway, Gav. So order of the games: Cardiff Dragons, Scarlets, Ospreys, then Dragons, Scarlets, Ospreys versus Cardiff. Just a quick, who do you think's going to win and by how many points, please?
Right. So I've said already, I think Cardiff by 4 and Dragons by 4. And then the next two games, sorry, I've lost track of them, is then Dragons, not Dragons,
Scarlets, Ospreys.
Scarlets Ospreys. I think Scarlets by 3. And then Ospreys Cardiff, Cardiff by 9.
Ooh, interesting. Hattie, what do you think for your predictions?
I am going to go with the Cardiff Dragons. I'm going to say Cardiff by 9.
Yep.
As much as I really want it to be the Dragons, so no, can't really say it. And the Scarlets Ospreys, I'm going to say the Scarlets by 5. And then, do you want me to see Dragons versus Scarlets as well? Am I doing both?
Yeah.
Yep.
Sorry,
Yep.
I've had
all of them
brain
one
fart.
go.
Okay. Dragons versus Scarlets, I'm going to say back the boys. I'm going to say Scarlets by 7, and then I'll say Cardiff by 11. Sorry, Nick. I seem to be right with Osprey's predictions, though, so.
You mean it seemed to be right
Yeah.
or wrong? Right, Nick, what about you, my friend?
I'm going uh, Cardiff by 5. I just can't see him playing as badly again. Much as I'm going to hopefully regret saying this, Scarlets by 4. And then going on to New Year's Day, Dragons will beat Scarlets at home. Dragons by 5. I think we will have at least one win over the festive period. Ospreys by 3.
So was that Ospreys by
3.
3? Cool. And then for myself, I have gone for Cardiff to beat Dragons by 12. Despite me being utterly unconfident at all, I just feel
You
that's
can't
the way
not
to
do it.
go. Scarlets by 4, and then again I've basically just picked. I think we've all picked home team wins apart from Hattie. And then I've gone for Dragons to beat Scarlets by 3 and Ospreys to beat us by 8. Just because that's my feeling. And then a little bit on the broadcast. So Cardiff versus Dragons will be at 3 o'clock on Boxing Day on Premier Sports and BBC One Wales, BBC One or Two Wales. And then Scarlets Ospreys will be on S4 as well as Premier Sports. And then New Year's Day fixtures. Dragons Scarlets will be S4C with Premier Sports, and Ospreys Cardiff will be on Scrum 5 Live, usually on BBC Two Wales. Sometimes it's BBC One Wales. Just double check on that one. Or as always, they're all available on Premier Sports. Now, is there anything any of the panel would love to talk about or get off their chest before we head off for the night? Excellent. So all that's left for me to say is thank you, Gavin, for joining us at short notice. Thank you,
thank you,
Hattie and
Gavin.
Nick, for joining me as ever. Thank you all for listening, and Merry Christmas and Happy New Year all.
Nadolig llawen a blwyddyn newydd.